Hi guys, welcome to part 5 of the White Label game tutorial series. In this part we're going to be looking at player equipment and equipping players with items to boost their stats. This part is going to follow closely to our last part, which was the items, and a lot of the functionality and logic behind it could probably be copied straight from the items section. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our user equipment table, and on this table we're going to have three fields, and we'll just call this one player equipment. So I'll fill in these three fields and join me back in a second. So we have our player ID, which is the int type, and this one is also the primary key. We've then got our armor slot and we've got our weapon slot. Now those are the only two item types we'll be handling when it comes down to equipment. Both our armor slot and weapon slot are both integer types, and all we're going to be placing in there is the item ID from the game items table. So one of these IDs will be placed against the weapon slot or the armor slot. Now we've got here we've got two weapons, and we've also got two armors. So we need to add a strength and defense values to them, because they're going to be manipulating those stats on the player. So on our dagger we're going to add a strength value, which will increase the player's strength when equipped, and a dagger is a relatively small weapon, so it won't increase strength by that much, so we're just going to increase it by 3. Now the longsword is obviously going to be a bigger weapon and contain more power, so we'll give this one a strength of 8. Now thin armoring and steel armoring are both the armor type items, so these ones are going to be increasing the defense. Thin armoring obviously will be lightweight, not very protective, but will offer some support, so we will mimic the strength values of the weapons onto the defense of the armoring. So the thin armoring will have defense of 3, with the steel armor with a defense of 8. So we're going to update them tables, so now they've got their stats. So that is our first two parts completed. We've set up our user equipment table, and we've also created our wearable items to the point of giving them stats. Now when it comes down to equipping items, if we go back over to our inventory page, where we worked on increasing the user's HP by the food that they ate, a lot of this is going to be copied in such a way that we're going to be getting the stats from the game items tables, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to be increasing certain player stats values depending on what type of item they are. So what we'll do is we'll first create the basic of the items, the item structure, the page structure, and then we'll come back. Okay, so I've created the basic page structure of the equipment page. It mimics the items page as in relevance of finding the what items. And down here, what I've done is where it originally had type equals food. What I've done is I've changed it to say where type equals armor, or where the type equals weapon, then we want to equip an item. So as you can see here, you've got thin armoring and steel armor both come up with equip, and dagger and long sword both come up with equip. What we also want to do is we need to display what items a player currently has against each of the slots. So what we'll start off by doing is coming up here somewhere. We're going to find out where exactly we are. We'll add it up here, and we'll put a couple of, just put a paragraph break here, and we'll say armor slot, and we'll say weapon slot. So we have our armor slot and our weapon slot now sitting there, ready to have whatever item placed against it. Now we need to perform a bit of PHP here. I'm doing, and we need to run a query which it gets the information from our player equipment table. So I'll quickly construct this query and then we'll be back. Okay, so now as you can see, we've got sort of split the current equipped items up from our items list. We've got our armor slot displaying nothing and our weapon slot displaying nothing. So we go back over to the code, we look here, and we're running a simple select query. We select all from player equipment where user ID equals the session's user ID. And what I did do is I went back into our table and I changed the original player ID to user ID to keep it all sort of uniform and the same throughout. And obviously if our player equipment table or the user ID doesn't appear in the player equipment table, we're going to get returned nothing. So what I've done here is, after executing the query and storing the objects into the equipment variable, what I've done for each of them is I've done put if the equipment type, the equipment and the armor slot equals null, then an armor slot variable equals nothing. I've done the same with 0, else the armor slot equals whatever's in the armor slot. Then I've gone and done the same with the weapons, which is what's creating the term nothing if it's empty. And I've just echoed it out next to armor slot and weapon slot. Now if we go back over to our equipment list or our item list that's been displayed under the weapon slot and armor slot, it's displaying wood, steel and everything else. If you look down here at our food types, which are our berries and our apple, is still saying that this item restores so much HP. Now what we need to do is we need to remove that and replace it with it increases whatever by whatever. And in the process, what I'm also going to do is I'm also going to remove anything that isn't of the equipment type, something you can't wear. So we'll be getting rid of all the materials and the food. So I'll go and do that. What it's going to involve is turning this inner join to another kind of join, a left join, which we covered in our last tutorial. And it will look for items which are of an armor or a weapon type value. Okay, so this is the final result. It just produces the dagger, the longsword, thin armouring and steel armour as we wanted it to. So going back to our code, we'll have a look on how we achieved this. So what I'm gathering here is I've got the player items ID, game items, the item name, quantity, strength, etc., etc. And we then execute a subquery using a right join. Now the reason I've used a right join as opposed to a left join is if we replace this with a left join and we come back over here, we get a series of emptiness. Basically, we have no item names against any of these. It's hard to explain on why it's doing this without sort of spending quite a while explaining it. There are tutorials and other documentation which states, the difference between a right join and a left join. So we use a right join on this one, and we're selecting all from the game items table, where a game item's type equals armor or it equals weapon, and we give the temporary table an alias of game items, and we're joining them on player items, the item ID, and the game items ID, where the user ID equals the session's user ID. Okay, coming back down here, we echo out the item name and the quantity. And because we're only selecting two item types, we can get rid of these other ifs because they're always going to appear as true. And we'll replace all that with this little if-else statement here saying this item increases, and if the road type equals armor, we say the defense by however many points, else it increases the strength by however many points. And here, we have it here. Right, so join me in the next video because I'm swiftly running out of time.